Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan, in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, and my aunt, Lori Summerfield.
Hello there. In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we go through two of Bruce's letters in depth, and in the process, we learn about Bruce's siblings, life in Santa Ana, and reminisce about old ledger ads for Hattie Scott's. And we'll be joined by our guests who will solve a family mystery and read a letter. Before we get into it today, we want to give a shout-out to the composer of the theme music you hear at the beginning and at the end of every episode, Roger McNaughton. Roger is a talented musician who's also wrote the music you hear playing while we read Bruce's letters.
Absolutely. It's been a great addition to the episodes as we get into reading the letters. We're going to kick things off today, as always, with our corrections, updates, and additions segment. That's how I'm thinking we need to call it now. We're definitely have things we need correcting or things we didn't know at the time and we find more information about. Like, for example, in our last episode, I mispronounced Bombardier? See, I can't even do it now. Bombardier. See, this is bad. So I gotta make sure I get this correct. Bombardier. It's a classification, right? That one of the classifications that the pre-flight trainers at Santa Ana could do. But what else did we miss? Dad, Aunt Lori, or anything else we need to update?
Oh, my favorite segment of the podcast, where I make regular and frequent appearances. This week I have more additions than corrections. And the first one comes from our sister Mary Marta, who listened to our inaugural podcast in South Carolina, probably while out floating on Lake Wylie. Marty wanted to add to our discussion of Dad's post-war flying, texting me that she remembers Mom and Dad talking about Dad flying Senator Gerald Ford to places after the war.
Oh.
She thinks he did this more than once and that Ford was probably a state senator at the time. She added she didn't think it was apocryphal, which immediately became my new word for the day.
I was going to say, of course.
So an unconfirmed family story, but we'll find out more about that if we can. And I just talked to my brother and sister-in-law, Steve and Kay Collins. Kay's father, Orville Jackson, and her uncle Leonard Jackson were local pilots for many years. And I just learned that Uncle Leonard flew B-51s and accompanied B-17s during the war, specifically in 1943. So we're going to have to do some more research. I think it would be too much of a coincidence to think that he accompanied Dad, but we're going to see if we can find out.
Well, it definitely adds to the conversation we had about what other Lowell people besides Bruce were pilots or were in the war. So.
Yeah, Kay said that Leonard knew Dad and took him up flying a few times. And she wasn't sure if Leonard ever flew Gerald Ford, but he did occasionally pick up Lowell showboat dignitaries and talent. So maybe more on that later. And Dale, I know you'll be excited to hear that Leonard kept a war diary. And Kay is making copies right now for you.
Oh, good, because I had a friend of ours said there's some footage of pictures of him. I mean, there's also a 8mm picture of him doing a strafing run.
What?
Yeah, supposedly. So I got a person that supposedly, was Gloria Jackson's son, who Leonard married after. So I'm hoping maybe he can find that piece of footage. Would be unbelievable.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Okay.
I know. So we got some goodies here to do some digging.
Okay. All right. So another Lowell man, Leonard Jackson, another pilot, possibly flew Grandpa around Lowell when he was learning, and
you got Al Wisner that
went to the war.
Was shot down. Yeah, we got some good stories coming.
That's great. Well, did you have anything yet, Laura?
No, I'm checking on Reservoir Hill.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
okay.
checking on the reservoir and the water treatment center. So more next episode. Next episode.
Oh, well, we ended up kind of catching our corrections ourselves or getting more information from other people, but we definitely want listeners of the podcast, if you have like additional tidbits like this as you're listening, please get a hold of us. You can comment or message us on Facebook, on the Lowell Museum Facebook, on our Letters Home Instagram, or on the Lowell Museum YouTube channel under each episode's video. And when we see your comment, we'll read it, we'll change it, we'll rectify it in a future episode for sure. So in our last episode, we read some of Bruce's more pensive letters home about what he missed from Lowell, and we're going to kick things off today talking about Bruce and his dad, Frank, my great-grandpa. A lot of Bruce's letters were written to both of his parents, but around this time, he mentions a letter that Frank, his dad, wrote back to him on June 16th, 1942. So I'll have Dad, why don't you kick us off with this one in his own words?
Dad, that letter you wrote was sure swell. Do you realize it's the first one I've received from you? Because that isn't surprising, as the mothers usually do the writing. But gosh, I didn't know you could knock off such a good one. Suppose you realize you got yourself into something. I'll kind of expect one every now and then.
So 2 days later, Bruce writes a letter just to his dad, Frank, part of which described an athletic competition at the base, in his own words.
We had athletic classification yesterday, and yours truly really turned in a hot card. I was first in the 75-yard dash with a time of 8.6 seconds and 17 seconds in the 150-yard, both first places. They took my athletic record, and it will be put in the papers. When I get one, I'll send you the clippings.
So first of all, given Bruce's athletic ability, the fact that he was setting records at the base is not at all surprising. I did do a little internet digging, because he talks about the papers, and I don't know if this is what he's referring to, but I did find out that Santa Ana Air Force Base had its own newspaper called The Cadet, and it didn't start, though, till July 1942, so this would have been right around the time. Maybe they were getting ready to do their first issue or something, but I was thinking that maybe his athletic records was in this paper, and I cannot find it on the internet, and the closest thing I found was the Library of Congress said it's at the Santa Ana Public Library, but only in microfilm in person. So I haven't been able to get to California yet to find it. So
Good excuse.
we'll see.
I doubt that it's apocryphal.
Well, Caitlin McMahon's in California right now. She's in,
But,
not in
it's a
Santa
big
Ana.
place. We'll see if we can find Santa Ana, but we'll see. Maybe we'll be able to find it there. But what do you, Dad and Aunt Lori, what do you remember about Bruce and Frank's relationship together? He seems like surprised that he wrote him a letter, or he's like, I don't know. Do you remember anything?
Well, both Mitch and I have talked about. Obviously, we didn't know much about the relationship because we weren't there. But knowing that, us reading the letters, we both have commented about like, oh my gosh, there was so much respect and so much reverence for his parents, especially. And I think he comments lots about to his dad. So.
Well, and Grandpa Frank was very religious. He went to Mass every day. I remember
day?
every day, because he would take us to school at St. Mary's and then go to Mass. As we did. We went to Mass every day before
And
school.
he was always worrying about him too.
Yeah.
About working on the poles, the poles for electricity and that stuff. He was always concerned to, keep an eye on yourself. Don't do too much.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's.
Did any of you have any idea Frank was a good writer?
Look, I just found out that Frank had 8 brothers and sisters. That's just news to me. So yeah, no, I didn't know.
We're all learning a lot.
I guess I'm just finding out Bruce was a good writer, so
Yeah.
I guess that's not a surprise there. Well, we're going to read more letters, but we're going to mix it up a little bit for this episode, and we're going to talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in June 1942, but we're going to talk about these things based on what Bruce wrote in 2 of his letters in June 23rd and June 25th, 1942. And remember, you can see the letters and the primary sources on the Lowell Historical Museum website, all curated by our guest, Dale Croft. He's been here with us the whole time. Welcome again, Dale.
Glad to be back. We're rocking once again.
All right, so we're going to start with a letter that Bruce wrote on June 23rd, 1942, to his parents and to Betts again. So Betts must still be staying with them at this point. So, Dad, you want to start this one again?
Sure.
In his own words?
Tuesday, June 23rd, 1942. Dear Mother, Dad, and Bets, my time is sure limited. I'm getting better at tearing off letters, so I'll probably write as often, but not as much. We have quite a lot of schoolwork to do, and the only study period we have is from 7 till 9 at night. However, it isn't too tough, and I can always write a letter or so during this period. I tried to call Dad on Father's Day, but no one was home. It took 2 hours to get the call through to Michigan. By that time, you'd probably gone somewhere. I think they got it through at 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Well, when I call again, I'll write you first so you can be waiting. Say I'll try to call at 7 Sunday night, and it'll be 10 your time. I'll probably have to wait an hour, and it might be impossible to get through, so if I don't make it, don't worry or anything. I'm not a bit lonesome. I thought you might like to hear from me.
Why does it take 2 hours for a phone call to get through? And so why is he calling but then waiting an hour? Dale, can you tell us anything about how phone calls
Well,
work?
you got to remember what was going on in the world at that time. There were approximately 15 million phones in the U.S. in use in the United States in 1933. By September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, the number exceeded 20 million. Many cities in the country experienced 250% increase in long-distance calling for the time period ranging from 1941 to 1942. The increase in long-distance calling was fueled by the increase in the number of families that own phones and phone lines, but also because people want to contact family members stationed in remote locations as the country prepared for war. The War Production Board was restricting the use of resources in the production of non-war related products and services. Residential phone customers were allocated party lines in lieu of standard private lines. A phone company employee explained to a customer, I love this, that the copper required to produce 1.5 miles of copper wire could be used for ammunition that could keep a machine gun firing for 4 minutes.
Wow.
Propaganda pamphlets reminded citizens of the importance of the telephone in the war effort. One such pamphlet displayed an image of Uncle Sam and declared, he's got to have the first call. Another, help keep the lines to Washington clear. War comes first. So
Another sacrifice.
that might have, another huge sacrifice. Party lines, and we're going to get into another piece of sacrifice here in a few minutes about.
So they had to share phone lines.
Yeah, well,
for the
party
war.
lines. I mean, I think Mitch and I can remember. At least
Oh,
I
yeah,
can.
we had party
We
lines
had
with the
party
Joneses.
lines.
And, yep.
Yeah, you could always listen in on another person, but you had to be real quiet.
Oh my gosh. So that explains why he might have had to wait to get his calls through the war.
Yeah,
it might take a
yeah.
while to get it
Yeah.
to his parents. Okay, so another aspect of, speaking of sacrifice, he mentions another one in this next letter. One that I'm a little bit more familiar with, but I'll hear from you after we read it, how people were rationing and saving their clothes. So, Dad, you want to keep going with this part of the letter in his own words?
Say, I sent my clothes home. You probably already received them. Have them pressed and moth-proof because I'll be wearing them again someday. However, if they would fit anyone in the family by having them altered, I wish that you'd do this. Chances are the suit won't fit when I need it again, and it's a shame to let a suit like that go out of use. Maybe Raj or Ed or Bern could get it altered. Dad's a bit too big around, I think. This will leave me without a suit, but I hope to have a nice slick uniform to wear afterwards until I can buy Civics again.
Yeah, there's that reverence for Frank again. He's too big around to wear my suit. I'm just kidding. But Dale, what can you tell us about how people rationed, saved, or recycled their clothing during
Well, in
this
an
time?
earlier episode, we talked about rationing of food and all kinds of other things. Today, we're talking about clothing. Some of the slogans that were out at that time were, for example, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without.
Yeah.
Another was make do and mend, and another was sow and save. So these were all part of everyday life to supply the items needed for armed forces. Cloth such as wool used for uniforms, nylon needed for parachutes, airplanes, netting, and tents, due to the fact that the silk came from Japan, which was banned.
Oh, yeah.
As a result, fashions everywhere adapted to the use of less fabric. Women and men's fashions became more simple and slowly began to copy the styles of the military. And the U.S. War Production Board created an austerity guidelines to reduce fabric use by prohibiting pleats, cuffs, ruffles, patch pockets, attached hoods, etc. Dresses were limited to 1 3/4 yard of fabric. Zippers were no longer available, so suspenders became very popular at the time.
Okay.
I like this. It's kind of cool. A siren suit. Due to the threat of air raids, a garment for civilians was introduced called a siren suit that could be pulled over pajamas when air raids occurred.
Oh my God.
Oh.
So you could jump out of your bed instead of running down there in your underwear or whatever. The other thing was that we talked about ration books. Well, clothing rationing worked by giving each type of clothing items a points value, which varied according to how much material and labor went into its manufacturing. If you earned 11 points, you could get a dress. 2
Wow.
points would give you a pair of stockings. And 8 points for Mitch and I to get a pair of shirt or a man's shirt or a pair of trousers. Some items could be purchased without coupons, such as secondhand clothing, workwear, and blackout cloth. So that kind of gives you an
Yeah.
idea of the different things. Now, I don't know if some of you remember Marie Croft. She was a seamstress in Lowell. And if you ever bought clothes at Coons's, she would put zippers in and shorten your hems and shorten your... But she
Okay.
kept every piece of trim, an inch piece from pair of pants. She had sacks of it up in her bedroom. When she passed, we probably took out, I don't know, just sacks and sacks of material. But she also made rugs out of that,
And
Well,
who are
the-
you talking about again?
Marie, my grandmother.
Your
Croft,
grandmother,
yeah.
your
So saving
grandmother.
every
Yeah,
little
lived up on
bit.
Grove Street.
Yeah.
Saving every little
She
scrap of fabric.
sewed and did all those things.
grandma.
So, she charged $1.50 to put in a zipper or something, and she still charged $1.50 when in the 70s. I tried to give her extra money. She'd go, "Oh no, I don't take
Well, that's.
that."
I mean, I'm still.
So-
I'm so amazed. Like another sacrifice there, right? Like the war board saying,
Yeah.
"No, we're not putting ruffles on clothes," and
I'd
we
never
need to
heard
save
of that
every
point
little
system.
bit.
Well,
yeah.
I can still remember going up there, and she'd have a light bulb inside a sock, and they bend the holes in their socks, darn their socks, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I can still see her sitting there.
So
darning
fixing
socks.
everything rather than
and
buying
a lot of
things
people
new.
started knitting too, and knitted different
Yeah.
types of clothing for
Wow.
the time. So
Well, that makes sense that he sent his clothes back because he's
Right.
not using them. He's in uniform all the time, and then
Right.
saying, give them to somebody
So-
else or get it fixed up
Sure.
if it fits.
Sure.
we're also talking about all these people were depression.
Yeah.
Everything was. You watched their spending. You watched everything was cash. Everything you watched.
Yeah. So that's probably-
Sacrifice.
So that wasn't maybe a
Yeah.
new thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this letter, he's talking about getting it altered for Raj and Ed and Bern. We've talked about Bruce's dad, Frank, and his mother, Lotta, a lot, or Lottie. But Bruce was the youngest of 4 kids, and he often writes to or mentions his siblings, as he did in this little part of the letter. Aunt Lori, Dad, we probably should tell the listeners who Grandpa Bruce's siblings were. Anyone want to take that one, or at least?
Marion was the oldest.
Okay.
Born in 1903. And Bern was the next, born in 1906. And then Roger, 1911.
Okay.
And then Dad was born in 1915. So those
Okay.
are the four children of Frank and Lotta.
All right, so his
McMahon.
oldest sister was a good 12 years older than him.
Yeah.
All right, so there was a
I
bit
don't
of a
remember
span.
Marion. I do remember Byrne quite a bit, and I don't remember Roger. He was a prosecuting attorney for Grand Rapids, but
Okay, so that would be the Raj in this letter,
Yep.
and Byrne. We see Byrne, but who's Ed?
I'm going to guess that it's Ed Reynolds,
Okay.
which would be a cousin, right?
Yep.
First cousin.
Yep.
All right.
I also, thanks to you, Annie, looked at Find a Grave.
Yeah.
And so then when I searched findagrave.com, I knew that there were lots of people that are our relatives that were buried in St. Patrick's, but I didn't realize that not only was Grandpa Frank's mom and dad are there in St. Patrick's, but who is Owen McMahon, but Owen's father is there.
Yeah, who came from Ireland.
Arthur, yeah, and Owen's wife came from Ireland too. So dating back way in the 1800 way,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, oh my gosh! But on that site they have pictures. So I've walked I've walked that cemetery, but there were some that had like Lester as a married name that I didn't know was a McMahon, but it's Lester because that's what they were Their last name. So
Wow,
they showed
okay.
a picture of that grave, which was interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so thank you.
findagrave.com is, I mean, it sounds morbid, but it's actually really good for genealogy.
Oh, it is.
And
Very
finding,
good.
siblings and threads of
good.
people. A lot of amateur historians like me will use.
Yeah, absolutely.
will use that, and especially if you want to go, visit the cemetery or whatever it might be. So, so we think Ed is a first cousin, and Raj and Bern are his brothers. So he's saying, get my suits altered for them.
Right.
So let's keep going with this June 23rd letter. It's a long one, but it keeps going into some world news and some local Lowell news. So, Aunt Lori, do you want to take this part in his own words?
So far, I haven't gained or lost any weight. I'm feeling good. I don't have any sore throats, headaches, etc. Don't expect to wash out at primary. Only thing could wash me would be my eyes, and they're a lot stronger, I think. Anyway, I won't get another physical for 6 months, and by that time, I ought to be in darn good, near finished with my officer's training. War news looks fairly good. I was in charge of quarters yesterday and heard 2 captains talking. They had just heard the news broadcast, and though the news was quite bad, they seem to think this war won't be a long war.
Ugh, yikes.
Yeah.
Those captains were wrong about the war being short. That's always sad to read those. I think he's referring to the news right around this time, based on the dates of the letters and what I could find, that the Axis powers, so that's like Germany and Italy, and Japan, they had taken control of Libya in North Africa, and the Japanese submarine had hit Fort Stevens in Oregon. So at this exact time, like mid-June 1942, things were not going well for the Allies. But yeah, it's so depressing to read them be so positive about the war ending soon when, like, you're reading it and you know that it doesn't. It goes
Right.
on for 3 more years.
Yeah.
But anyway, this letter goes on to talk about some happier things. So let's keep on with that one in his own words.
It sure would make you laugh to see me read the ledger. Never thought I'd read it clear through, but so help me, I even read Hattie Scott's ads.
So obviously I need to know what this is. So Dale, you included one of the ads for Hattie Scott's in your primary sources. So what is Hattie Scott's? Where was it? Why is Bruce bringing this up in this
Well,
letter?
reading some of Bruce's letters, I think it probably was one of his favorite spots to stop. He had a sweet tooth. Anyway, Hattie Scott had what they call a candy kitchen, Kandy. In 1908, she opened a little candy store with her husband on Main Street, on the bridge, making and selling homemade candies, ice cream cones, pop, milkshakes, and popcorn.
Oh,
In 1913, they changed the name to the Duran Creamery Company. And then later it became Hattie Scott's Candy Kitchen after her husband passed away and her mother passed away 3 months later. So she was not open for over 20 months when both her husband and her mother passed away. She had 25 years on Main Street. And in 1958, the candy store burnt to the ground. Remember the fire of 1958 on Main
58.
Street? I can remember sitting, looking out my window on Riverside Drive, watching, going, how am I going to walk to school? And the store was basically where the levee used to be on the corner. There was another little building, and then there was an opening, and basically kind of next to Wetman's building is where this candy store was.
Yeah.
so Hattie Scott was a real person.
Yeah,
As this candy
she's
store.
there'll be some pictures on our YouTube presentation. Wears a nice little white, the old 20s look, the long dresses and the hair right back in the bun, and so there'll be several pictures of her, the creamery and Hattie's candy kitchen.
All right.
So
So
Yep.
the store, did you ever, okay, so getting my timeline here, and for the listeners, did you ever visit the store as kids? 1958? So you
No,
you would have been little, maybe.
I
you went to
remember the fire, but just
I walked across
generally.
that street twice a day going to school, and I don't remember that. 1958, of course, I was only 7 years old. I was going to first grade, second grade, whatever. But I
I
must
think
have
you'd
walked
remember a
right by it.
candy store as a kid, though.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
yum.
I don't remember.
All right. Well, clearly Bruce has mentioned it, so he wants to visit. He's even reading the ads, thinking about it from
Yeah.
I
California.
think Dale's right. I think Dad probably frequented that place.
Well, yeah, he had a sweet tooth. He liked cookies and gum, and we'll learn about all that later down the road here.
All right, well, let's finish off this letter with some more Lowell news. Aunt Lori, you want to finish this off in his own words?
All news from home seems to hold a lot of fascination for me, even if it's out some people I don't know. I got a letter from Betty Bailey, and she said you had a picture of me. You know my intentions are purely friendly. Also, get one to Eudora Marshall if you can. She's been very loyal writing to me, and I promised her a picture before I left. Can't lose track of my feminine admirers. In another 20 minutes, we'll go to mess, so I'll close. All my love, J. Bruce.
I mean, these kids, I mean, is he being sarcastic about the feminine admirers? But I don't know. There's like women writing him letters and, giving him, asking for photos. I don't know. Some mysteries are here. Who are these people?
Susan will indicate a little bit, but I'm sure she'll tell you that he had a reputation. He had a little bit of a reputation to have those female admirers, I guess. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. So we got some more mysteries to solve at some point. Like who are Betty Bailey and Eudora Marshall? Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah.
So speaking of mysteries, it's time for a new segment we're calling Mystery Solved.
Yay.
Our inaugural Mystery Solved. So in this segment, we're going to take something that we didn't have details on in a previous episode. Sometimes it'll be family mysteries, could be anything. And we're going to reveal some new information uncovered by us or by you, the listeners. In our last episode, we mentioned that Margaret had appeared in the Lowell Ledger, that's Bruce's future wife, because she attended her friend Eunice E.J. Guide's bridal shower. But at this point in time, she and Bruce had not yet met each other. So that's what we talked about last week. And we talked that none of us really knew how they met. So our guest on this week's episode has the answer for us. Let's welcome Mitch and Lori's sister, Bruce's middle daughter, and my aunt, Susan Tunis. Welcome, Susan.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of funny. I can't tell a lot about how they met, but I can tell you that E.J. Doyle, Dad was friends with Bill, and E.J. and Mom taught together.
Okay.
And they fixed them up on a date.
I knew it!
And their first date, you're not going to believe it, was at Christensen's drugstore. And they sat in a booth together, and the rest is history for somebody else to figure out, because we just didn't talk about that much back then, but...
Okay, so they got fixed up by her same friend
Yep.
that she was...
E.J. Doyle.
Go ahead.
Yep.
So,
Lifelong friend. Yeah.
right. So Bruce knew EJ's husband. Bill.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that.
Yep.
So this bridal shower is the beginning. No, I don't know if that's the beginning, but it's
Yep.
something.
Yep.
The beginning of the story.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's good. So Bruce eventually met that girl. And took her to Christensen's drugstore. Well, I want to remind our listeners that if you have more information on anything we're unsure on, please help us solve these history mysteries. Even if you know Betty Bailey or Eudora Marshall, some of my grandpa's many feminine admirers, or remember going to Hattie Scott's. We definitely want to hear from you. So, again, comment, message us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, if you have more information for us, and we will read it in a future episode. So we're going to finish today with part of one more letter from Bruce from that same week in June 25th this time, 1942. And we're going to have our special guest, Aunt Susan, read it for us. You know, we can't have you come on without reading a letter. So in his own words.
Okay, June 25th, 1942, Thursday. Dear folks, I received your letters yesterday and also the rolls for my camera. Thanks a million, Dad. By the way, Dad, you really got to keep on with those letters. It seems darn good to hear about the plant. Sorry about the big Fairbanks. Guess you were lucky that someone else found out about it, especially now if you have water to run with. It shouldn't bother too much. You know, it's funny, but I never realized Dad was such a man of letters. If you people only knew, he writes one of the most interesting letters that I get. How's everything with you, Mother? If it won't make you lonesome, I tell you that I think of you every night and hope that it won't be too long before I see you again. It was a month yesterday from the day I arrived here. It will be 5 weeks Sunday when I left you. That means that about 1/7 of my training is completed. In another 6 months, I'll be home on furlough, and I'll promise to pester you all day long, every day I'm home. Cheer up, 6 months will roll around pretty fast. Marion is sure a loyal letter writer. She writes about every other day and gives me all the news she knows I'm interested in. It's kind of hard to keep up with her, but she says she'll keep on writing, whether I answer all of her letters or not. Yes, we are the pampered soldiers of Uncle Sam's army, but they are making sure we're good men. We have an obstacle course that we have to go over twice a day. It consists of 3 and 4 foot hurdles, tunnels, 8-foot high smooth wall, rough mounds, 8-foot wide water barriers, hills, zigzag course, and more hoops that you go through on your belly. It's about a half a mile long and plenty tough. Our food is all dietetically correct, and we must be in bed. Lights out at 10 o'clock. You can see that we'll be in good shape when we get through this toughening course. They don't give you hardly any time to yourself, but between classes and physical work, you're busy 12 hours a day. However, I like it, and it's darn good for me. Can you imagine? I'll sure know how to make a bed when I get out. Well, I'll sign off for now. God bless you all. Your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. I'm not forgetting morning or night prayers. Please send the St. Christopher Medal when you get a chance.
Awesome. That was so great.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Bruce's description of that obstacle course is actually hand drawn out in that letter.
That's so cool.
That's right.
So he illustrated it for us. So if we have that letter, remember, on the Lowell Historical Museum website, as well as on our Instagram. We'll put it there too. And you can see Bruce's St. Christopher Medal, which he does eventually get. So that P.S., he says, please send the St. Christopher Medal. He does get it eventually. But that's for another episode.
I just want to say the other thing that is so, it's almost ironic, but like Dale has seen that letter and he's seen that obstacle course. And just so that our listeners know, I mean, he's obviously knows more of the letters than I know. And I haven't seen the obstacle course. I mean, I know how Dad wrote, and would draw things, but it's so wonderful that we have somebody who's looked at this and researched this, because it makes me want to look at all of it now. And it's just so immense. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
And now that Dale, I mean, we've got it chronologically. It makes so much more sense. It makes so much more sense to me, and I'm just really happy about it again too, that we're doing this and that Dale's helped us with that, and I can't wait to look at the map of the obstacle course.
I know. It's so great. And Aunt Susan, you're so great. I feel like you captured his voice.
I do too.
I don't know. I was like hearing him when you were reading too.
Yeah,
It
me
was so
too.
great.
Me too.
That's very cool. Well, we should just end there. We're not going to top that. That's it.
Well, we have a mystery, another mystery now. We have
What's
to
that?
find out
Oh.
about the big Fairbanks.
Oh, yeah. What's the
Anybody knows
Fairbanks?
anything about that? Well,
Okay.
the
We're
water.
gonna,
just before we go.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to have to put that in our next mystery. But on our next episode, though, Bruce goes to Hollywood. So there's a little preview there. He takes a little trip to Hollywood. Well, thank you all for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Susan Tunis for being our special guest reader today, and Dale Croft, as always. A big thank you to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream them at lowellradio.org. See you next time.